Alrighty. Howdy, everybody. Welcome to another edition. We're back with the Stats and Scars crew covering injury and stat analysis. We missed week 7, but we're back for week 8. And we got a lot to cover this week. So we'll be doing the injuries, of course, followed by the DB list. And then we got our stat analysis followed by a stat phenomena, if you will. And then later in the episode, we'll have our recap of week 6 in the NFL and our predictions for this upcoming week. Including 2 games from each of those. And of course, at the end, you'll hear our winners and losers from the college football previous week and some insightful predictions for this upcoming week of college football, which is an onslaught of games. But if you're a first-time listener, you can follow us on Shatter the Script across Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube, or search Shatter the Script for Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. All right, well, let's get rolling, boys. It's glad to be back. I'm glad to have the full crew. It's been a while since we've seen the medical guy in here. Glad to have you back. We've been having wishful thoughts as of late for the medical guys. So good to hear that it was good news before we started recording. So well, let's get started with injuries, shall we? I know there's been some big time ones like Metcalf and Ayuk and Jade Daniels. So I'm sure you've got all of those ready to go in your arsenal. So I'll let you begin your 30-second spiel. No.
Yeah, there we go. Absolutely. Well, half of this is basically like people that are injured, and half of them are like coming back from injury. So we'll get it started. So obvious one, Chris Godwin. We all saw that.
Brutal.
Foot was turned the wrong way. Playing in garbage time really looked bad. So he's definitely out. Compared to Dak Prescott's injury when he had his ankle injury. Next, another blow to the Buccaneers, Mike Evans. He came into the week with a questionable tag on him for his hamstring, and then I think in that second quarter, same thing happened. So reports coming out that he'll probably miss until after the Buccaneers Week 11 bye. So be prepared to, pick anybody up. I know in our league I had a stack of Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans, so that's kind of a toll to my team right there. Yeah. Next, Zay Flowers, we saw him go down in that game. It was kind of a little indecisive what it was, whether it was a leg, whether it was an ankle, but we saw him removed from that game. Has a questionable tag, so could be back, could have just banged it up a little bit and couldn't continue. Obviously, that Ravens offense didn't skip a beat there, so next, kind of a weird one popped up today. Andy Dalton got in a car accident. He's being seen by medical personnel such as the hospital and then the team. So hopefully him and his family are okay. T's and P's out to them. Next is Deshaun Watson. We all saw the Achilles rupture. Regardless of what you think about him, that's a brutal injury to have on top of a brutal time that he's having in Cleveland. And then next, Brandon Ayuk. We saw that he tore his ACL. That 49ers roster is kind of taking a beating right now. He'll obviously be out for the rest of the year. Next on that 49ers roster is reports came out about Deebo Samuel having pneumonia, and basically what happens with the pneumonia is that the fluid builds up in the lungs, and then you get into a much more serious injury and stuff like that. Normally that fluid buildup is due to being sick and then not necessarily moving around. So I don't know if, say, it was an off day or he had something going on before the game and whatnot, but we saw that he was very limited and looked pretty sick on the field and whatnot. Next, we're going to go into our guys that are returning. Okay, so Jonathan Taylor, it's kind of been a weird injury the last couple weeks, kind of been game time decisions, but he's predicted to play this week. Same with Travis Etienne. Cooper Kupp is expected to return. I know there's been some trade rumors come out and stuff like that, but he's looking to return. Tua Tagovailoa has looked to come and start.
No guardian cap.
Yeah, no guardian cap, and return to the practice field. And we'll see how long they let that progress. I would imagine it won't be this week, but you never know. He's a grown man. He can make his own decisions. Next, T.J. Hawkinson. I know he was brought off the IR last week, didn't play. I know he's limited today per NFL reports, but be expected him to come back, and that's really going to be an interesting offense there at Minnesota. Now they can bring in that dynamic weapon at tight end along with their other ones. And then Puka Nakua also coming off the IR. So for like 3 of my fantasy leagues, that works out great for me.
Yep.
I would imagine it might be another week before he comes back, but it is trending in the right direction. So that kind of wraps up my injuries. I know I know you mentioned Deebo Samuel. They did say it was a grade 1 MCL and that he's week to week.
Metcalf?
Yeah, what did I say? DK Metcalf?
Debo.
My bad.
Talking
my
about
bad.
Metcalf, right?
Yeah, DK Metcalf, sorry. He did have that grade 1 MCL. The reports came out he is week to week. I know we've seen this year people come back a little earlier than predicted and whatnot. However, as with like Jordan Love, we saw him come back a little earlier and really struggle in that first game.
Yeah.
So I would assume that it would probably be maybe a 2-week thing. And obviously, you can go through practice for most of the week and then step wrong and you could go, I wouldn't say back to square one, but if you come off of practice, and the biggest thing is how he responds the next day with those type of injuries is, he may have a good Wednesday practice, but Thursday he comes back and he's, his knee's blown up or he's feeling a little more sore. And so that'll obviously set him back a little bit, but I would imagine it'd be about a 2-week thing, 3 weeks tops, especially with just how much of a monster he is. He probably heals faster than, 99% of the population. So,
like Russell Wilson?
Yeah. Any questions about any of those injuries or returners or anything y'all want to add?
Ryan, any questions?
I don't have any. I just find it very interesting about Tua coming out and doubling down on everything he said. I'm like, bro, you've had like 4 concussions in 3 years? That's just... I don't think the Guardian Caps do anything. Personally, I don't think they add a bunch of beneficial, but it's kind of wild that you wouldn't take the extra precaution on that. But that's my only comment from everything you just said. So
yeah,
I think it would be good for a lot of a lot of teams to get their guys back.
The Guardian Cap. I love how it's controversial now.
Yeah,
just a cap on the helmet. Everybody's like, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of studies proving that it doesn't work or it doesn't necessarily protect as much as people think. But I am with Ryan. If there's something that even gives an inkling of, a little bit more protection to a guy that not only has concussions and had them in the past, but when he does have them, it's not like, oh, my head hurts. It's like, yeah, now you're laying on the field and going into your different fencing positions and stuff like that. So it's never like and I don't want to say a mild concussion because that's not necessarily a thing, but a concussion that, doesn't end up you having to be spine boarded off the field kind of thing. So, definitely interesting on that part. But, go ahead, Jared.
I have 2 questions for 2 different players. I saw that Cooper Kupp was designated to return Thursday night. I don't know how valid that is. And then the second one was, have you heard anything on Jonathan Brooks in Carolina?
So Cooper Kupp, he came off IR last week, and basically they wrote it up as predicted to play. He did have a little high ankle sprain, and I think he's been out. I think this is his 4th or 5th week, something like that. I would imagine he would play and be able to go Thursday. Now it is going to be a little interesting on a short week, but I would imagine he would be able to play this week and be able to go. Everything he actually wasn't even on the injury report on the NFL report. So I would imagine he would play unless he gets traded somewhere, and then he may not in that regard. And then Jonathan Brooks, they did say that he was coming off IR as well. And basically what that means is he's cleared to practice fully. Okay. And so that still could be a couple more weeks. Or say if he does get into the game, I would imagine it would be kind of a limited snap situation. But same thing with them. It's like, how much do you really want to push that envelope? With, the Panthers not necessarily being in contention. They've had some injuries pop up. They don't know who their quarterback's going to be, kind of thing. And so that would just be an interesting injury to
it's a build up
there. Yeah.
I think they should go the ETN route and just kind of let him sit and come back fully healthy year 2. That's personally what I would do. But they have a couple different running backs that have shown, like
I mean, Chuba Hubbard this year is having
been great.
A random outlier of a year.
Yeah.
With Miles Sanders back there as the secondary back and whatnot. So it would just be interesting to see how much he would play if he did. And to me, it would make not much sense to bring him back early. I would imagine, if it was up to me, which it's not, but if it was, I would imagine it'd be like 2 more weeks of like full practices, no setbacks, no soreness, nothing like that, no abnormal soreness, and then limited snap roll, and then when we're into the season and they're obviously out of it, they're like, hey, let's see what this guy's got, and go from there with it.
All right. Well, that wraps up injuries. Let's get into the DB list, the down bad list.
Oh,
every week we got multiple candidates up for sale.
Yeah, and this one is, everybody must have been living right this week because there weren't too many candidates. However, there were those few that did not. And my first candidate off the DB list, and it's a returner. And I don't want to know if say returner, but they take up space there. Are the Cleveland Browns, man? Like,
yeah.
We've gone over what all they've done and everything, and how bad this year's gone, and the last 2 years, and then you have your guy that you spent all this money on, with so much baggage that came along with it, who has not even surmounted to an inkling of what he was or what that contract was worth. And then he gets up there and he has a brutal injury, and we've seen multiple different occasions where this could be a career altering injury. And so they are just, and then at the same time, they have a quality quarterback in Jameis Winston who's an emergency QB. And so in that game, Deshaun Watson went down, DTR went down, who was the backup, and so to me it's just a cluster of lack of intelligence on how they're kind of running that. And you would imagine Jameis Winston, who's been an okay starter, a really good backup, to be a backup, and you have a guy who hasn't been a good backup as your backup gets hurt, and then you have to go to your emergency quarterback.
Right.
With the lack of weapons and all that. And then, of all things, they put, Nick Chubb in there. And it's just like, maybe this guy will help us out. It's like, he goes 10 rushes for 20 yards. And you're just like, this is just bad.
Yeah.
Just bad.
It's bad. And on top of that, they are applauding the injury in the stands.
Yeah.
So
that was a tough look. But
that was also tough.
I think that was more towards... Obviously, a little bit towards the guy that got injured and towards, just management.
The animosity toward him.
Yeah. Absolutely. After they had just gotten rid of their, one weapon on the outside, now it's like, why are we here?
Yeah.
So,
why are we playing football games?
Yeah, so I'll let y'all go around and give y'all's. I do have one more, but I'm sure one of y'all will say it. So.
All right, the analyst.
Well, I'm gonna go to college here, and this one just irritated me because I work with a lot of UT fans, but UT fans with the throwing of bottles.
Oh.
And that one irritated me because, and they're on the DB list for this reason. A lot of the people I work with that are UT fans, they came out and they're like, I was talking to them about it, and they're like, we didn't change the outcome of the game or the outcome of the call. Like, it was already being discussed. And I'm like, well, no, it wasn't, because like, about 10 seconds run off the clock, they're setting up the next play, or they're going for the PAT, and all the water bottles are being thrown on the... I mean, first off, it's really bad on the SEC, but it looks bad for UT to be getting beat like that at their home field. Granted, the call was terrible, but throwing all those bottles on the field just is never going to be a good look. So that was the first one I had, and I'll keep UT on there for other reasons as well. They got stomped by Georgia, but
yes, they did. Yep, and it's funny to me because I don't think all of those were water bottles.
No,
well, that's not Baylor.
That's why I said throwing of bottles.
Yes, my DB list candidate is the Washington Post. Now, this one I talked about it on my personal episode, but this one is funny as hell to me because they attacked the Bussin' with the Boys for laughing at a comment that Donald Trump made on, it was a guest on their podcast, about basically, as Will Compton phrased it, he couldn't handle the A gap. And, if he basically admitted that if Donald Trump goes over the middle, he's getting his vertebrae compressed by, possibly a linebacker who went on to go play at Nebraska and debatably 10 years in the NFL, which was hilarious. And so they wanted to comment as to why they laughed at the comment that Trump made. And so Will Compton gave them their statement and shit on them. So I just think I'm still going to talk about it. I'll double down on it. I just think it's hilarious, and it's exactly the way that you should treat, those articles and journalists that come after you for trying to tell you how to run your own show. Like, just flat out. So your last one.
That was a good one though. Just what a clown response to Bustin' with the Boys, and then even clowned him more back. Like,
he bodied Washington Post.
Absolutely. My last one, and even though the garbage time worked in my favor, but the Buccaneers game yesterday.
I had that one as well.
Obviously, they went over. I went over the injury suffered in the game, but I mean, you're a .001 chance to come back in that game, and like all your dudes are out there, and not only do you take an injury to one of your top guys in the beginning of the game, I mean you're losing a guy for a whole year who, might I add, is on a contract year and was having a hell of a year.
Yeah, he's balling.
Yeah, and gets hurt, and like he's gonna be out a minute, and it was just a tough look to see. And then proceeded to continue playing with their starters in there. And I was just like...
More hospital balls.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know how, like, Cade Otton probably couldn't move today.
No,
like
that's the comment I was going to make.
He got the Percocet treatment from it.
Oh
A-Rod.
my gosh, yeah, they brought the medicine bucket in there and said, just take a handful, bud.
Yeah,
and
like Halloween.
Yeah, and I was just like, what, like... Yeah, I get wanting to play hard to the end of the game or whatever, but at that point, I mean, you should have cut your losses before. But after Godwin goes down, like, I'm taking knees. Like, I'm like, who's our emergency QB? You're going in there taking a knee. Get every starter out of there. Get them in the ice bath. Like, we're like that. It was just a bad look, and then just to see like Todd Bowles go out there and be like, oh, gosh darn it, somebody else got hurt, and it's like, buddy. Like, you're the coach. You can be like, hey, let's wrap this. Let's take our losses, lick our wounds, and get at them next week. But now, I mean, you've got to go out there with Cade Otton and, Sterling Shepard as your best weapons outside of running back.
Yeah.
Like, what a tough look, man.
Yeah, it's not good. I disagreed with it as well, in all seriousness. It's T's and P's for Chris Godwin. I know he was pretty emotional and beat up about how he's already battled an injury and then has to go back into rehab. So... Yeah, that's brutal. All right, that wraps up our injury part of the episode. Let's go right into our stat analysis from the Analyst.
Are we doing game recaps after that?
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, week 7. There's a lot to talk about, but there's a lot of stats to talk about. But the only stat of the week I have is that, have y'all looked at the MVP odds lately?
It's Lamar, right?
It's Mahomes.
What?
It's Mahomes at plus 450 and Lamar at plus 450.
Yikes.
So we've already talked. Yeah, I was just gonna say we've already talked about how just bad this award's gotten and how a lot of people view it. And to have Mahomes up there that has more interceptions, which every quarterback gets, beat down for, which we know for a fact, and him being the front runner because the Chiefs are now 6-0. But like we got all over Lamar last year about how we didn't think that he should win it, but Lamar is having a heck of a year. It's just so weird to me that Mahomes is the front runner betting favorite alongside Lamar now after this week to be the MVP absurd. When he's playing subpar. He's not playing terrible, but he's not like jumping out the gym right now. So that's the only stat I have. But what I really wanted to talk about was how and I got beat. I was telling Jared and Jacob, I got beat to this by pardon my take, but how bad the NFL is right now. I mean, Jacob brought up a great point when we were talking over text that there's like 4 teams right now without a question mark, and everyone else has major issues somewhere like in their team.
Yeah.
The Lions, these are my 4. The Lions, the Vikings, the Chiefs, and the Packers are, I think, the 4 teams right now that are good. And the Chiefs, I would even argue that they have a hole in their offense with how Mahomes has been playing, but they don't really have. They need a receiver. Like, they just need one receiver, and Mahomes would, make do. But everybody else, man. I mean, you talk about like the Niners right now. They're injured to death. I don't know if I've ever seen a team more injured than the Niners right now. I mean, it's crazy. The Cowboys are majorly injured, but even when they had everybody on the field, they cannot run the ball.
Major gaps.
Their offensive line looks really bad right now. I'm afraid to admit that Zach Martin might be losing a step or two, and it already hurts me to watch Tyron go through the same thing. But like all these teams that you had last year, like I'm trying to think who else. I mean, even the Bears right now, 4-2, and I don't even think they're that great of a football team. The Eagles are in shambles. They beat the Giants. They might be on the up and up, but I think they're a very beatable team. The Chargers the Commanders are the same way.
Are 4-2, and they might have one of the worst defenses in the league.
They're 5-2 now, I think.
It's just as we sit here at week 7, I just look around, especially at the AFC. I mean, the AFC, the bottom half, maybe the bottom 10 teams in the AFC are terrible. And the NFC, you have a wide open, the Saints started out huge. They look terrible. Granted, Derek Carr's not there, but even when Derek Carr played outside of those 2 games, he hasn't looked that great.
Huge drop off from the Saints.
A lot of interesting football right now. Like, the Bills. Everybody's talking about the Bills. They still have holes on their team. I mean, the Texans. I think the Texans are a little bit overrated right now. They don't, Stroud. We'll get into it on my stats, but I just don't think that there's a lot of great teams in the NFL right now, which is just weird to see in Week 7, especially because we talked about how like this first 2 to 3 weeks, you kind of get this struggle, and then you see teams kind of break into their stride and start winning a bunch of ball games. Now teams are winning ball games, but they don't look all that great. So we'll get into the stats, but just to start that off, it's just very interesting to me to see how it's a lot of great quarterbacks are not playing well. A lot of defenses that we thought were going to be good look really bad. So anyway, going into the quarterback of the week, this one was super easy. I felt like it was easy. Lamar Jackson. Last night he looked phenomenal. Every time he threw the ball 22 times, completed 17 of them, and ended up with 281 yards. 5 touchdowns, and had 52 on the ground. Like, pretty much any time he touched the ball, he was creating a big play. And it's very evident that offense is a perfect fit to me for not only Lamar now, he still could use a receiver, I feel like, but Derrick Henry in that offense is just, it opens up everything for them. I mean, that offense looks very, very talented right now. So, we talked about them being 0-2. Now they're 5-2. I made the comment early on that I thought the Colts might have a good chance. There's no way in hell the Colts are going to make the playoffs. The Ravens are your 0-2 team that are going to the playoffs, man. They look phenomenal right now. And their defense is still not even playing up to par. So, easily for me, Lamar was the QB1. I mean, he ran all over the Bucs.
Yep.
Dud of the week, C.J. Stroud. He looked absolutely atrocious against the Packers. 10 of 21, 86 yards, 19 on the ground. It just seems like you could make the case that without Nico and his lineup, he really tends to struggle, which is very interesting to say because, they still have Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Joe Mixon. I mean, Woke Boy over there playing tight end for him. The offensive line is not terrible. He's got a good play caller. But yeah, I think the Packers, like I said, are one of those complete teams where they actually have a defense now, and Jordan Love is Jordan Love. Yeah. So dud of the week for sure, C.J. Stroud. They just really struggled up there in Green Bay, which is very common for Texas teams, as we all know. So, running back of the week. This one I felt like was also pretty simple. I had Derrick Henry up there. Almost picked Gibbs as well, but I had to go with Saquon, especially playing his old team, the Giants.
I like that one.
17 attempts, 176 yards, and a touchdown. He could have actually broken the record for most rushing yards against his former team. And there's that video that came out that he was like, I'm good, I don't want to do it. I was like,
let the young boys eat.
If it were me, I would have been like, give me like 3 more touches, I'm breaking it. So, yeah, Saquon came back strong. I tend to think that a lot of that came from a lot of that production. Obviously, when A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith are back on the field, there's a lot more to take care of for any defense that plays them. And as for my dud of the week, Jordan Mason, 14 attempts, 58 yards. Now, I know they play the Chiefs, but it just seems like, and I know this because I'm a McCaffrey Mason owner in fantasy, and I hate having to go through this pain, but it just seems like with McCaffrey out of the lineup, and granted, we've already talked about how the Niners are very injured, but now they're even more injured after this game. With McCaffrey out of the lineup, they can't decide between running fat-ass Debo up the middle or letting Jordan Mason run the ball. So it's like they get down. I've watched like 4 games now of them. They get down to like the 10-yard line, and then they just like forget how they got down there. They get all the way down there with Mason, or they run the ball with Debo, since Debo can't run past the line of scrimmage, and then they get to the end zone and they start just throwing corner routes to the pylon. And I'm like, dude, run the ball. So I think a lot of this for Mason was also that the Chiefs are, I think, arguably, maybe not even arguably, the most indisputable best defense in the NFL. But, I mean, if you watch that game was very tough to watch. So
I agree. Moving
on to the wideouts. Amon-Ra, wideout of the week. 8 receptions, 112 yards, and a touchdown. This was a very important game for the Lions. And, this is the reason you pay those guys to show up in these big games. And it just felt like every time the Lions needed something, if it was 3rd and long, if it was, 2nd and long, something where they needed a big play, I just felt like it always went to Amon-Ra. There was multiple times where these catches weren't just like him progressing through the game. Like, these were big catches, and that touchdown was big. So that's why I went with Amon-Ra for the wideout of the week. There's some other wideouts out there that had some more highlight reel catches, but Amon-Ra showed up and did his job against the NFC North opponent that was undefeated as well, and the defense that we've been raving about, the Vikings, all season. So my dud of the week. It's crazy how your quarterback can go off, but your wideout 1 does nothing in this game. Zay Flowers, 1 reception, 11 yards. Felt like the ball, like I was saying, was going everywhere the entire game, and he wasn't even close to involved. I mean, I felt like they tried to get him the ball maybe 2 or 3 other times. They tried to give him a carry, and he got lit up in the backfield. I'm not sure. Grant, one of the guys that play in our league, says that his ankle got rolled, but like I saw him right back in the game after that. I'm not sure if that affected him, but he was just like flat out not involved. It's just kind of weird to me how Lamar puts up these crazy numbers, but like nobody. It's not like your typical fantasy environment where like you have, like Jacob said, you have like Baker and a Mike Evans stack, or like Josh Allen and Amari Cooper now, or guys like that where you try and stack your receiver and quarterback. Like nobody's stacking Lamar with a receiver. It's just weird to me how like these guys all play with Lamar. Lamar might throw for 300 yards, but nobody's going to use any of their receivers in fantasy. So Zay Flowers was the dud of the week. Do y'all have any comments on any of those guys, or anything that y'all saw that you thought I didn't mention, or any comments about how the NFL is kind of in peril with some really bad play right now?
First off, I agree with your running backs of the week and all that kind of stuff. But I'll add to your list of duds. I think it's eye-opening to see Marvin Harrison put up like 0 production.
Yeah, I almost picked him again, but I picked him 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's bizarre to me because then you look across like who else is catching the ball for Arizona, and really no one else is catching the ball for Arizona besides maybe Trey McBride. But that offense is kind of struggling, and it's eye-opening because everybody has these huge expectations for Marvin Harrison. And like I know he got hurt a week ago, but the week before that, and really the whole year, it really hasn't been up to the hype. But yeah, I mean, you could argue at running back too to put Henry in there. I mean, Henry and Lamar are actually a lot of people's back-to-back like number 1 and 2, like 1A, 1B MVP candidates because Derrick Henry looks unstoppable. But that's all I have on it.
Yeah, I feel like I've been watching. Going back to the Cardinals, I haven't watched enough of the Cardinals, but it seemed like the first 2 weeks they were going to be the fun team to watch. Like, the team where if your team's playing them, whether you're good, bad, or ugly, you're like, I don't know if we're going to beat this team. I mean, they already beat the Niners, but now the last, 3 weeks, it's like they look abysmal. And I haven't watched enough of them to be like, is it Kyler? Is it Marvin Harrison not running routes? Is it play calling? Like, I haven't watched enough of them, but it's just crazy to see how all of a sudden they're no longer like the fun team anymore. So,
well, for me to add on to dud of the week, for me it's a toss up between Jaden Reed and Tank Dell. I mean, the Packers just slung the ball around, and Jaden Reed had I think 4 catches for I don't know if he had that many.
It's like 3.
And then, yeah, and then Tank Dell, who everybody said hey, Nico Collins is going out. Tank Dell's going to be that twitchy guy that steps up and just lights it up. And I mean, I think he had 3 targets and no catches. He had 0 yards. It was the biggest reason I know him is because they're both on one of my fantasy teams. But it's yikes, and I felt like Tank Dell had huge expectations coming into this year. To be that second guy next to Nico Collins that would get kind of those, dump off routes, quick routes, those close, zip routes for touchdowns and stuff. And I mean, he even dropped a touchdown this game. And so he was a dud of the week for me. And then just to go on to the Cardinals, for me, it's just they're a very odd team to just pay attention to because majority of the time this year, they will start with the ball. And they will go down and look like the 2000 or 1999 St. Louis Rams greatest show on turf. Yeah. And we'll pull out this drive that looks just almost perfect. And then you'll check your fantasy score. Kyler Murray's 4 for 4 for 52 yards and a touchdown. And then, 2 hours later, you'll check it again and he's 9 for 12 for 78 yards and still a touchdown. And I'm like, what? Did we only have a first drive script written, or hey, maybe we just run that script again, or
expand the play sheet a bit?
It's very interesting to look at and watch that team because I feel like every game they've been in front of within 3.5 minutes, and then from then on out they do nothing.
He might be the most streaky quarterback in the NFL. Now that I'm kind of thinking about it. So. Yeah.
All right, well, that was our stat portion of the episode. We'll move on into our recap of 2 games. We're going to do the Lions versus the Vikings and the Niners versus the Chiefs. So you had the Lions going into Minnesota. We'll start with them first, and getting that last-second field goal to win 31-29 to Minnesota. This is a big win. Obviously Minnesota was undefeated. We've been raving about this Brian Flores-led defense. But also, the Lions coming off an outstanding home win, and it's really hard to follow up on that offensive performance that they put up against Dallas. I mean, no matter who you are, it's just hard to repeat that kind of. I would argue the Lions looked better against Minnesota than they did against Dallas because they faced a tougher opponent and they handled the blitz perfectly all day long. I think Jared Goff was 18 of 19 at some point, which earlier in the season he had 100% completion percentage. So I think he's on a roll. I think he's playing the best football of his career. And like Ryan said, Amon-Ra St. Brown, there's one catch in particular. I remember it was a dig route thrown on his inside shoulder that he was hit by 2 guys at the same time on a 3rd and long. And it's what kind of cemented their drive to, stay ahead of the sticks and stay ahead of the game. And he was just clutch at every aspect. And, of course, Jahmyr Gibbs kind of picking up for David Montgomery, who had been hurt the previous week, or in that game. So I love the Lions. They're going to be increasing on my power rankings for sure. And it's just everyone is bought in to Campbell. I mean, it's nice to see. I'm a little envious, but that's kind of my recap of this game. I'll kind of pass it along to the medical guy and give him his recap. But yeah, I liked what I saw from the Lions a bunch, and I didn't dislike what I saw from the Vikings either. I mean, I thought they played well, especially I think they showed us a lot that they could play from behind. So yeah, but that's my recap on this game.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you just said. The Lions look. They look like a 1B team in the NFL right now. They've and I think I termed it in one of our texts or when I texted one of y'all, like the Lions high end when they're functioning at everything, they look like they're unstoppable. Like you said, with Jared Goff having these basically perfect portions of games or majority of games. I mean, obviously you could look at the Cowboys game as an example, but we said it multiple times, like it looked like every play they ran was going to go for 6. Like you just have people wide open, or you have Jared Goff making these great throws and people making plays. And to see Montgomery go down and then immediately Jahmyr Gibbs step in and tote one to the house. And so I just think that the Lions showed a lot and against a good team and showed like their high end. There's not many. It doesn't seem like there's many teams that are gonna be able to stick with them. Completely agree with you with what you said about the Vikings. I mean, that was kind of their little snag for them, is that hey, they've been ahead of a lot of these games. They've let their defense pin their ears back and get after everybody. And to see them get up again and then kind of fall back down and then come back and bring it close and whatnot, it's really impressive. And it's really impressive to see 3 teams out of division, possibly be all top 5 teams in the NFL. So it seems like those 2 plus the Packers are kind of those front runners for the NFC. And, I'm interested to see how the Vikings do coming off a loss and seeing how they do. And, their schedule for the remainder of the year, until they get to the end, I believe, they have to play... I'm pretty sure they play like Bears, Packers, Lions to end the year, but their schedule from here on out until then is pretty simple. So, I could expect them to be maybe a 1-2 loss team at worst going into those last 3 or 4 weeks. So, very impressed with what I saw from both teams there. There's really nothing bad to say about either of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so a lot of points have already been said that I had written down. The only thing that I'll add was that the Vikings, the one thing that I would like to point out that Jared already said is that the Vikings were really close to getting blown out in this game. There was a moment in like the second quarter where it kind of looked like the Lions were going to run away with it. And to Jared's point, the Vikings haven't had to play but from behind all year, and they stopped the Lions multiple times. Kind of clawed their way back into that game, and that's what I wanted to see from the Vikings was, can they play in a competitive game, because they haven't had to in a minute, and they showed that to me. Now flipping over to the Lions, I'm not sure there's a QB in the NFC right now that's playing better than Jared Goff. Maybe Baker. Baker didn't play well last night, but Jared Goff right now is playing the best football, like Jared has said, that he's ever played in his career. I feel like every time I'm looking at him or watching him, he's barely throwing incompletions. He's reading the field well, and I think that just really speaks to how the Lions roster is set up. And he's got the best weapons, the best system, and the most experience, one of the more experienced QBs now in the NFL. And I think that's why he's playing so well. He never truly was a terrible quarterback, but like when he was on the Rams when they went to the Super Bowl, that's not the same Jared Goff you're watching today. You can tell that he's gotten a lot more experience. He's a lot better at reads, and he's finding the throws that make the difference, and he's got the guys to make those kind of throws. So it's really been fun to watch Jared Goff. But flipping that over to Darnold as well, I can't get enough of watching Darnold too. He's been slinging that rock, and having Justin Jefferson out there is nice. But I mean, every throw he makes, it just looks nice too. So This game was a ton of fun to watch. Other than the penalties, that's the other note I have. There's 8 penalties on both teams, and it just felt like there was a flag fest for a minute. Then they hit the fourth quarter, and it kind of smoothed out. But, yeah, these, like Jacob said, these are two of probably the top 3 or 4 teams in the NFC, and it's crazy that maybe you could argue the other 5 in that list are in the NFC North. So it's going to be a bloody battle, but this is a great game.
Yep. All right. And then moving into the Niners and Chiefs. So the Chiefs, this was an ugly game in my opinion.
This game sucked.
It sucked. No one really enjoyed watching this football game besides the commentators glazing over that one play from Patrick Mahomes. But the Chiefs ended up coming out of this with a dub, 28-18. You had Mahomes. He's doing his job basically, holding the lead and sticking with it. And then Purdy did not look great once again. I mean, it just looks like they're struggling. But I'll let the analysts kind of cover this game first, and then y'all can loop back around to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make mine fast, but this game, like I said, it kind of sucked. Like, you came off the high of, like, Lions-Vikings. You're like, dang, that was an awesome game. Now you got the Chiefs and the Niners, the Super Bowl rematch. And it just, like, started off with an INT fest. You had Pat throw, I think, 3. You had, I think, Brock threw 2, or was that flipped? Either way, that 5 interceptions. Yeah. So there was a ton of interceptions. Neither team really looked all that well, and then the Chiefs just kind of ran with it. Like I said earlier, I don't think I've ever seen a team as injured as the Niners, and it's really showing that, like, Brock Purdy, everyone last year was freaking out about Brock Purdy. Like, I don't think he's a bad quarterback, but I do think that he needs a lot to be what everybody's seen from him. Like, he's not a game changer. He's not going to do anything for you that's going to change. Like, he's not bringing a talent to the table that's going to change, games for you if guys go down. So at this point, the last point I'll make is I'm not sure the Niners are going to make the playoffs. That division is kind of sneaky. You got the Seahawks in there. The Rams are finally getting healthy. I don't know if they're going to trade Kupp or not, but watching them right now is pretty hard watch. I've watched like 2 or 3 of their games this year, and it's just really hard to watch the Niners right now. So yeah, this game, all that to say, this game really sucked in my opinion. It was just a total letdown after the Vikings and Lions game.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with those points and whatnot. To me, it seems like the 49ers have obviously lost a little bit of their identity. I think you made the best point earlier, where it seems like for 75 or 80% of the field, they stick to what the 49ers do, and then they get down to the last 10 to 20%, and then they just forget how they got down there.
Yeah, they pull out a different playbook. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's really come to roost at how much they're missing some of those guys. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on the Brock Purdy thing. I think he's a great quarterback. I just don't think he's that game changer.
No.
And so this matchup for them next week will be interesting, obviously. And then the flip side on the Chiefs, I mean, this is honestly, truly shows you the difference between 1, coaching, 2, having a defense that has your back. I think the most the Chiefs have given up this year is 25, and they showed up when they're, yes, Patrick Mahomes made a couple good plays, but for the most part of the game, he was not very good. The only thing that really saved his quarterback rating was that long run, or else it would have been, in the 40s. And then just the one point I'll have to make on this, and coming from a medical standpoint, it sounds weird to say or contradicting, but there's gonna have to be some type of rule or lack of rule or penalty for hitting quarterbacks on the sideline.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree that there was only one reason why Mahomes was able to complete that run, and it was due to the fact that if Fred Warner would have thrown him into the third row, there would have been penalties. There would have been a warrant out for Warner's arrest.
$1 billion fine.
He might have been sniped from the building the next one over. But to stop that from happening is, if you're going to go out of bounds, you got to go out of bounds. And if you still have 2 feet in or 1 foot in and you're tiptoeing the sideline, you need to be prepared to get smacked.
Yeah, you are a runner now. You are not a quarterback. You are a runner.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just like if Jordan Mason was tiptoeing down the sideline and Fred Warner came across or Nick Bosa came across, like they need to be smacking this dude and letting him know, like, hey, you can't fake this out, because it was evident that when he looked like he started going out of bounds, every one of those players slowed up and moved out of the way, and then he proceeded to run another 40 yards. And so I think there's got to be some. Obviously, you can't say like, oh, you've got to go out of bounds or stay in bounds, but like, if you've got feet in bounds and you're a runner, like Ryan's saying, and you just get blasted, like that shouldn't be a penalty. And so that was kind of my only take there, is like that was a game changing play kind of, and so it was just very weird to see.
Yeah, I would have to add on to that and say that it's an even bigger thing that it was Mahomes, because you know that damn well those NFL and the officiating crew protect him like no other quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
And if you would have put a helmet into his upper chest plate on that sideline, you're getting fined, you're getting penalty flagged. I mean, it's everything. I think the one thing to take away from this game really quickly, and then we'll move on into the Dallas versus 49ers game coming up this weekend, is that there were no touchdown passes thrown in this game. Mahomes had his rushing touchdown, and Purdy had his 2 rushing touchdowns. Outside of that, the quarterback play was very, very subpar. And it is just, Kareem Hunt was able to kind of produce on the ground, but like Ryan said, this game just sucked. It just was not good, and they had that one highlight play, and the rest of the game you were just miserable. So, but the Chiefs are 6-0 nonetheless, of course. But all right, so leading up to this game, there's a lot going into. Obviously, Dallas and the 49ers have a lot of history, a lot leaning towards the 49ers. Dallas sits at 3-3 coming off a bye. The 49ers are 3-4 after a loss, and they've had some bad losses this year, just like the Cowboys. These teams are very, very similar in terms of injuries, in terms of, scheme, loss. I mean, it's just going to be interesting to see how this goes. This game's going to be in San Francisco, but Ayuk, as Jacob mentioned, is on the IR. Debo, who was, categorized with an illness before the game and then goes to the hospital with pneumonia, and then CMC is going to be out. I think it's interesting to me how the 49ers have handled their injuries this year, specifically with Debo and CMC. But that's a different story. But yeah, like I said, Dallas off a bye, coming off the terrible, terrible loss to Detroit, and they're 0-3 versus San Francisco in their last 3 matchups, mostly in the playoffs outside of one game. And it seems like every time the Dallas Cowboys play the 49ers, it's in San Francisco. So I'll start with the analyst on this one and give your predictions for this game, which, in my opinion, is an absolutely unpredictable game.
I don't think it's unpredictable whatsoever. San Francisco minus 4.5, over under 46.5. This is the boogeyman in the name of spooky season. This is the Cowboys boogeyman, and it's sad that this is the first year Dallas could potentially beat them, just how beat down the 49ers are. And on the contrary, we have zero hope whatsoever for this game. I do not think Dallas goes out eyes wide open like a deer in the headlights, and the Niners win and look like a Super Bowl team, and it's going to be 34-17. That's it. That's all I got.
All right. Yeah.
Everything I just said about the Niners, how I think they suck, and like right now they suck. And I'm not sure they're going to make the playoffs, but Dallas is an absolute shit show right now. So I just think that Niners, they get back at home 34-17.
Yeah.
Medical guy.
Yeah. I kind of agree with Ryan here. I don't have much hope. Especially after
it's over. We lost.
The railroading they took last weekend. And the thing is that the playbook to beat Dallas is originated with the 49ers. If you want to play and beat Dallas, you just copy and paste. You just give old Shanahan a call, and he'll tell you, like, hey, run these 7 plays, and this game's over. And especially with, the one part of the 49ers that isn't banged up necessarily is, the defense. And I just don't think they're going to have the weapons. They have shown they're not able to run the ball. And the playbook's out on how to stop Dallas's offense is bracket the main target over there, and just don't let your third round and on drafted receivers beat you on the other side. And so for me, my prediction is 21-14 49ers. I think it's going to be your classic Dallas of being down for a majority of the game, and then third and a half quarter on, it's going to be like, oh wow, they've figured out how to move the ball. They're going to give us a little bit of hope, and then it's just going to out the window.
Yep.
So that 7-point difference is really not going to be. It's not going to feel like that. So
yeah, I agree with you both on this game. I think Garendo is going to have 100 yards rushing against us, and you're going to be like, because our rushing defense is so atrocious. But it doesn't matter to me that the 49ers are injury riddled. I think their scheme just completely tears our defense apart, no matter who's in the game for us. And I think this game's going to be very, very, very similar to the Cowboys at Pittsburgh. But one thing about the Cowboys that a lot of people forget to mention, Justin Fields was in there, and he had, no business converting anything in the red zone that game, and he struggled to do that. But who's worse at that, I would argue the worst in the NFL at converting in the red zone, is the Dallas Cowboys. And I think that's the difference in this game, which is why it's going to be very low scoring, and then you're going to get a media onslaught hate of Dak Prescott because this is one of those games that he could win but did not win. So the blame will go to him in this game in a 13-19 loss to the San Francisco 49ers.
13-19.
I'm telling you, it's just going to be field goal them to death, maybe one touchdown in the first or end of the game, but it's just going to – Dallas can't do anything in the red zone, and I don't think anything that they can do off the bye week is going to adjust. Historically, we're actually worse off the bye week with Mike McCarthy. So it can't get much worse than 2 weeks ago. But
yeah, first play out of the book is going to be like triple reverse to
Zeke.
To triple reverse to Turpin, 7-yard loss, and then we're going to go, quarter
draw.
Running back draw, and then to the sticks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the sooner we accept that they are a bad team, the better life is going to be for you. So when everybody was texting me about the Lions game, I was like in my kitchen cooking something. I was like, I'm barely paying attention to the game. So it's good. We're good.
Yeah,
we're fine.
It's good. Oh, they lost? I didn't see it. All right. Well, okay, we got the Commanders. This is a better game to predict right here. This is the Commanders at 5-2, hosting the Chicago Bears coming off a bye at 4-2. And we've already mentioned that NFC North is a very powerful division this year. But you have, Caleb Williams really catching fire over the last 2 weeks. They had major concerns going into it. He was my 2020 Vision quarterback of the week in my previous Shadow the Script episode. But Washington has no Jaden Daniels this week, and he's going to be week to week with that rib injury, which, I mean, who saw that coming? But Mariota is going to start for the Commanders.
Is that confirmed?
I'll have my own little take. I don't know if it's confirmed, but they said he was week to week, and he's most likely – there's no fractures to his ribs from what I read.
Yeah,
I think he has a chance to play.
Yeah, I saw he was questionable. There wasn't a fracture, so, you could, it seems like with him, you could just squeeze in a Friday or Saturday practice and he would be good to go. The biggest thing, obviously, is how mobile is he going to be and how well is he going to be able to take a hit. That's going to be the biggest concern right there. However, with Mariota, Mariota came in, and yes, it was later in the game, but he lit it up. So, you never know. But they said no fractured ribs, so that's a good sign. As long as there's no stress reaction or anything on any of those ribs, I think there's a high possibility he'll play.
Yeah, I'll let you go ahead with your predictions, and then we'll move on to the analyst.
Nice. Okay. So I think this is going to be a definitely more fun game than the one we were talking about earlier. But Chicago is a 2-point favorite. I think Chicago has a better defense than what the Redskins. Sorry, don't get me canceled.
Whoa!
The Commanders have faced all year, so I think that there's not going to be this 38-point game. But I think Chicago defense is going to be the big difference maker here, and so I have Chicago 28, Washington Commanders 24.
All right, the analyst.
Yeah, so I think I had this scripted out as I thought that Jaden was going to play. This will be an interesting game if they both play, if Caleb Williams plays, but I just read a report. It doesn't look like he's going to. I think the Bears slowed down against the Commanders, and it'll be all up to Caleb Williams to kind of find, and his company, to find a way through that. I think the Commanders' defense sucks, but I think what Jacob just said is very true, that the Bears' defense, I think, will also help Caleb out here. I think their defense is pretty good. So if Daniels plays, I have the Commanders winning 31-28. If he doesn't play, which it's sounding like that's the case now, I have the Bears winning 28-14.
Yeah, I think it was important to note on Mariota. It's funny, I kind of had my own script shattered there earlier, but Mariota looked impressive. Yes, he was playing the Carolina Panthers, but I was talking to this off script to some buddies of mine. I was like, and this is kind of the perfect scheme you want Mariota in. You're technically asking Mariota to play for Oregon again with Cliff Kingsbury in a college offense. So, and he's got the weapons, he's got the ground game, he's got the spell back, I guess you can call, for the Commanders. So I think those things come into play. But if Caleb Williams and them start catching fire and that defense plays kind of like how they've been playing all year, I've got the Bears winning this game 28-24. In a game where I think the Chicago Bears, they don't do a lot of production on offense, but they capitalize on maybe some mistakes from the Commanders. But I've got the Bears winning this one.
Yeah, we've got the same prediction, baby.
Hey. All right. Our favorite part of the segment, which always comes last, is the college football winners and losers and predictions. And we're going to do it a little different this week. We've been doing one winner, one loser. We're still going to stick with that. But at the end, we're all going to pick our own college football predictions and go into depth with it, and kind of mark why each team's going to win, and that way we can cover 3 games efficiently. So we'll start with our one winner, one loser. Ryan, we'll start with the winners, actually. Sorry. Who is your winner for this week? Or this past week in college football?
I think the one that a lot of people would pick is the game I talked about earlier that involved UT, the winner of that one. So I'm not going to say it just in case somebody else picks it.
Who was it?
But I have BYU. BYU is actually looking really, really strong right now, and that last-second comeback against I just lost it. Hold on. BYU played UCF. No, they didn't.
38-35, right?
Yeah, they won 38-35, but the end of that game was crazy. I think it was Oklahoma State, yeah. So,
Yep.
Yeah, that's a big win for BYU. They stay up 7-0. But the other thing that I think is a winner for them, too, is their stadium. I saw a lot of pictures that came out about that. Their stadium, it looks so cool. So, shout out to the Mormons. BYU 7-0 in the Big 12. That's big.
Sir. Medical guy.
All right, so I guess I'm going to go with contradictory to what I've said earlier in earlier podcasts, but I got to go with Oregon. I mean, I kind of counted them as a fraud, and then they came out and they took it to everybody they've played, and then they played a Purdue team that could have been kind of like a trap game, and gave up 0 points. I mean, in college playing other FBS teams, giving up 0 points is very difficult. Now, obviously, if you're playing, your money game, whatever, you're paying a team to play, I can understand that. If Oregon invites, no offense to SFA, but SFA up to Oregon and pays for that game, you would expect that game to be, a 69-0 game. But Purdue, not very great this year, but also, I think it was either 34-0 or 43-0. And we all kind of had our doubts about Oregon going into the Big Ten, new conference, all that, and they've come out and answered the bell, and being ranked number 1 overall. So Oregon is my winner from this week.
I like it. I almost chose them as well. I'm actually going to go a different route this is a kind of a fun one. They're going to be College GameDay this weekend. Indiana routing Nebraska Cornhuskers at home 56-7. And I think, they're at a 7-0 start. They jumped up to, I think, number 12 or 13th in the rankings. And this was a statement win. Nebraska's pretty good this year. They're not going to be winning any awards or making the college football playoff because they got to play Ohio State this week. But Indiana, on the other hand, has a great chance to make some noise. They play Washington this week, but they held Dylan Raiola to 3 interceptions in this one, kind of making him change his identity from Patrick Mahomes to, maybe Dylan Raiola. And Indiana, though, coming into this game, big question mark. Their quarterback, I believe, has a fractured thumb or something like that, or something happened to his hand. So Taven Jackson's going to have to come in and step up in Indiana. Luckily, it's at home, but Will Rogers in Washington ain't no joke. So I'll be eyes on that game this weekend. But yeah, Indiana's definitely my winner. And then we'll loop back around. So our losers of the week, medical guy, I'll start with you.
My losers of the week, or loser of the week, interesting enough, is Nebraska. Yes, it is a tough opponent in Indiana, obviously, this year. But come out like a dud like that is tough. Just to get routed. And, your quarterback, who, yes, is a freshman, but has shown to be, a little bit of gunslinger, kind of a stud, and basically lose their whole identity of offense and then obviously defense as well. That's a tough loss for them. It's tough to play a game like that and get beat 56-7. Like that's almost on the embarrassing side of things. So my loser of the week are the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Sorry, Will Compton.
Yeah,
that was a brutal one to take. All right, the analyst, your loser.
Interviewed Trump. Huh?
I have USC on here. They have basically withered away. The last 3 weeks, they've just kind of blown games. It's gone back to like the Lincoln Riley, what I said about how you're not in the Pac-12, you're not in the Big 12, you're in the Big 10 now. You got to have a defense. And they just, Miller Moss was supposed to be the guy, and they can't even get that going for him. So it's been very hard to watch or even see the scores from USC lately. They've just fallen apart. They started hot against LSU, and then they come out to Maryland and lose 29-28, and now they're 3-4. So it's pretty rough to see that. The other one I had was Oklahoma firing the OC. Not really doing much in their game. I think they put up 0.
I think it was 9.
Sorry. 9. 35-9 against South Carolina. That's abysmal.
Yeah. So, all right, Jared, rapid fire. The rest of your winners. No explanation, just rest of your winners.
The rest of my winners?
Yeah.
I had Tennessee as a winner and Georgia as a winner.
Nice. Brian?
Yeah.
I had Clemson flying under the radar, Army and Navy. And the reason I had Army and Navy on there, and I have to say this, red, white, blue, and the goddamn triple option.
Yes. All right. I had, honestly, y'all took the rest of my winners outside of Georgia. Georgia.
That's the other one I had.
That's crazy. All right, rapid fire, Jared. Losers. Rest of your losers.
Yeah, I had Texas, Alabama, and Nebraska. No, Alabama was going to be my main one because if you watch this game, it was basically just who can complete a football pass. And it was just Jalen Milroe firing absolute seeds across the field and just over his head, below his knees.
Lasers just...
Yeah. Like, the dude's got a rocket on. It's like watching AR-15 play football. So, that one was brutal to watch, but Tennessee got it done. Good old Rocky Top. Yeah.
Yeah, Jalen Milroe, everybody was scared to catch those passes. Like, defenders, the crowd, the wall, everybody.
I saw a receiver with 2 gloves on each hand. It's like...
Oh, man. Ryan, let's go your 2 losers.
My other 2 losers I had was UT, telling everybody that they were going to be the top dogs in the SEC this year. Got absolutely bullied at their home stadium. Yep. And that's the other 2 I already named, Oklahoma, USC. So
All right, y'all have my other losers outside of Michigan. Michigan,
Yeah, I had
awful.
Yeah, that's another one.
They are a top-notch D1 Big Ten team, and they have the epitome of a mixture of all three of us as a quarterback, and can't figure out which one to put out there. One of them's last name is Orgy, and that's just DB list candidate right there. If you come out with the last name Orgy, you got to be able to sling the rock or Denard Robinson that thing, and he is neither. And then they put out Tuttle, and he looks like a JV quarterback right now. So that's my other losers.
Yeah. All right, prediction time. Let's go into that. The medical guy, I'll start with you. Your primary college football prediction for this weekend.
All right, so I drew the UT Vandy game. Is that correct?
Yes, right.
All right, so coming off that game this past week, obviously a lot of controversy coming out of that game. I really don't think it's that big of a deal. I think if it would have worked out and they would have came back and made it a closer game or won, Sarkisian would have looked like the greatest coach alive. And it showed that, Ewers was rattled and needed a second to maybe not get blown the hell up. And so they sat him, and then he came out and looked a lot better. But at the same time, you got to understand, his first game back was against God knows who. I can't remember the team before that they played. But it was a much lesser tier team. He didn't look that great in that game. And then the next game, it's Georgia. So, okay, what did you expect? And then Vandy, they've shown to be tough this year. They're number 25 right now. I think that, it's going to be really hard for me to pick Vandy, so I'm not. So I'm going to go UT 31, Vandy 28. And I think this game is going to be really close. And I think it's just going to be who makes the less mistakes. I know that's pretty cliche, but on a quarterback that made a lot of mistakes this past game, if he can clean those up and take care of the football, like I said, as cliche as that seems, I think they can do a lot of good things.
All right, the analyst.
Yeah, I've got Navy versus Notre Dame. So
The
Navy,
troops.
Yeah, the Notre Dame is minus 12.5. The over/under is 52.5. Just looking at both of these teams, Navy is known, Army and Navy, like I said, are known for running the triple option. Notre Dame has kind of had some on and offs. They've had their highs of beating A&M. They've had their lows of losing to NIU. So going into this game, I'm going strictly off of vibes here. I really think that Navy is riding high, and when they're playing the way they are, it's kind of like what I was thinking about when Jacob was talking about the Vandy UT game. It's like the Vandy is thinking hey, why not us? And we're the team that's not supposed to win. Let's go in and play and see what we can do here. We've already done it once. Why can't we do it again? Navy's kind of in that same position. We're hey, we're 7-0. They're Notre Dame. We're not supposed to win, but hey, we're riding high right now. We're playing great ball. So I've got Navy in an upset. I think Navy goes in and upsets Notre Dame and kind of puts them back in their place, which is very common with Notre Dame. But I think Navy in an upset, 24-21.
And I hope it happens.
Yes,
I do too.
Absolutely.
I think that would be beautiful for America. Everybody united around the triple option, the veer. That would be awesome.
Yeah, if
All
Notre Dame beats Navy, they're terrorists. So.
Oh, yeah. All right, well, I've got the SEC Game of the Week right here. I've got Texas A&M 6-1 hosting LSU 6-1. These are literally identical football teams in terms of what they've done throughout the year. They had their bad loss at the beginning of the year, one to Notre Dame for A&M and one to USC in a personal vendetta that should have been won by LSU at the beginning of their year. A&M sits atop of the SEC at 4-0. LSU is second at 3-0. They both beat Arkansas. LSU's best win, I think, has obviously been a top 10 team in Ole Miss, ironically ranked number 9 at the time, 29-26. And A&M's best win, I think, was Missouri. Obviously blowing them out when they were ranked number 9, 41-10. And so my prediction for this game, and I guess I'll do my keys to success before that, I think you got to play physical if you're Texas A&M. You got to play physical. I literally think LSU is a soft football team this year. I think if you play physical, you're going to beat LSU. However, they're going to come ready to play because it's always a personal vendetta. blanket LSU's Kyron Lacey. I think he's their wide receiver 1 over there. He's their first-round draft pick. He's a senior. He's been playing great. Neusmeyer's been playing pretty great as of late. If you can get pressure on him, hopefully Scorton and Turner return. I know they had injuries in the previous game for A&M. And establish the ground game with Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels. Those guys are going to be crucial to A&M's success to get Weigman in rhythm. So I've got, with all this being said, if all those things are accomplished, you've got a Texas A&M fighting Texas Aggie W 20-16 at home versus LSU. Now, the flip side of this is if LSU pulls out this win, they're going to trade losses. Next week, LSU goes to Bama, and they're probably going to take an L, in my opinion, after playing A&M. So that's my prediction, 20-16 A&M. Please, God. All right.
Yeah, I think they have a good shot. So
Yeah.
this is the
we'll
best
see.
team I think A&M's had in a while in terms of physicality, which is your point. Like Mike Elko has got them boys riled up. You know, they look really good on defense for the first time in a while. So
Outside of Texas, this is their toughest matchup, and if they win this game, they will probably go into Texas with 1 loss. So we will see. But all right, well, that wraps everything up for this episode. We'll be back next Thursday for our Stats and Scars episode. You can catch us every Friday with the Challenge the Script episode covering our College Game Day matchup. So this week it'll be Indiana and Washington. I'm not sure there's going to be a new guest this week. We will make sure that it's out, though. And then next week we have a new guest as well for that College Game Day matchup. But then you'll see Shadow the Script on Sundays and Mondays. It's releasing on YouTube on Sundays, and then the rest is going to be on Monday. So if you want to catch it Sunday morning before the football games and catch that controversial attacking topics, you can catch us on there. But you'll find us at Shadow the Script across all platforms. We thank you all for joining in, and follow, subscribe, do the whole thing, and we'll see you all next Thursday. Appreciate everybody joining.